Welcome to today's explainer. When I first read the source material we're looking at today, I'm not going to lie, it honestly felt like I was reading my own personal diary of burnout. I'm a recovering people pleaser myself, and for years, I literally ran myself into the ground trying to be absolutely everything to everyone. So today, we are unpacking the architecture of the conditional yes. The research we're diving into breaks down the actual psychology behind why we so rapidly drain our own emotional batteries by just struggling to say no. We'll look closely at what the data reveals about this deep psychological wiring, and we're going to outline some real structured tools straight from the literature to help you finally protect your energy. So, let's unpack it together.
Let's be totally honest for a second. Do you find yourself saying yes to things you absolutely hate? Really think about it. You get a request and your brain is just screaming, no, 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 please no. But before you can even stop yourself, the word yes just falls right out of your mouth. I used to do this constantly. I'd say yes to every extra project, every weekend favor, every single social obligation, just to feel useful, only to secretly despise the work later. So why do we overcommit to things that we secretly despise? Well, the sources suggest it's a fascinating contradiction in human behavior. And spoiler alert, it is not just a harmless little habit.
To unpack this exhausting habit, here is our game plan. We're going to cover, first, the drained battery. Second, the roots of people-pleasing. Third, childhood survival roles. Fourth, discovering intrinsic worth. And finally, setting healthy boundaries. Let's jump right in.
Starting with Section 1, the drained battery, and the real cost of those forced commitments. The aftermath of an involuntary yes is absolutely brutal on both your mind and your body. The source material uses a metaphor here that I think we can all instantly relate to. Think of your emotional energy exactly like your smartphone battery. Every single time you force a yes to something you secretly hate, it's like opening this heavy, power-draining app and just leaving it running in the background of your brain. It is silently siphoning your emotional energy all week long. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening until it's too late.
And then boom, you hit 0%. At this point, you don't just feel a little tired, you feel entirely, fundamentally depleted. And right alongside that deep exhaustion comes a really heavy dose of resentment. Sure, you might resent the person who asked you for the favor in the first place, but more often than not, you deeply resent yourself for not setting a boundary. That feeling of hitting zero, it isn't just a metaphor, it's the very real psychological aftermath of betraying your own capacity.
Moving on to Section 2, the roots of people-pleasing. Let's unpack the fear driving all of this. We so often treat people-pleasing like it's this quirky, overly nice personality trait, right? Like it's almost something to brag about. But the sources completely dismantle that idea. People-pleasing is actually a habit stemming from a deep-seated fear that your value is conditional on being helpful. It's not about just being a nice person. It's a fear-based condition. We drain our batteries because we subconsciously believe that our entire worth as human beings is tied exclusively to our utility. Basically, if we aren't actively doing something for someone else, we feel like we're worth absolutely nothing. Just let that sink in for a second. Your value is conditional on being helpful. That is a heavy burden to carry.
The research points to the absolute core drain on our internal battery, and it's the profound fear of rejection. We subconsciously believe that if we aren't constantly useful, if we aren't perpetually saying yes to our friends, our family, our boss, we're going to lose their love. We are going to lose our place in the group. Our brains literally equate setting a healthy boundary with abandonment. We say yes simply because we are terrified of being cast out.
Which brings us to Section 3, childhood survival roles, and where this all actually starts. So you might be wondering, how does this wiring get installed in our brains in the first place? Well, the data illustrates how vastly different childhoods can actually lead to the exact same behavioral trap. Take the scapegoat, for example. This is the child who is always blamed and feels they have to constantly labor and please just to make up for their perceived flaws. Now, contrast that with the easy child, the kid who never causes a fuss, constantly praised, precisely because they don't seem to have any needs at all. These are incredibly different ways to grow up, yet the psychology reveals they both lead right to the exact same problem.
And that's because both of those childhood roles learn the exact same survival tactic really early on. Being good keeps me loved. They learn that to maintain love, to stay safe, and to avoid rejection, they have to perform. They must be helpful. They must never ever say no. That childhood survival mechanism hardwires the brain to equate utility with safety, and it directly transforms into the adult with a perpetually drained battery.
All right, Section 4, discovering intrinsic worth, and the major paradigm shift we need to make.
This is arguably the most important paradigm shift in the text we're analyzing. It's about moving away from conditional worth, which demands constant, endless labor just to earn your space in your relationships. Instead, we have to embrace intrinsic worth, which demands only that you exist. That's it. You do not have to perform just to be worthy of love and respect. Realizing that your worth is intrinsic is basically the master key to finally unclipping that heavy drain from your emotional battery.
To actually make this transition in real life, the source material recommends 3 highly actionable steps. Number 1, consciously separate your output from your identity. You are not what you produce. Number 2, acknowledge your inherent right to rest. Rest isn't a reward for finishing your to-do list. Actually, let's be real, the list never finishes anyway. Rest is a biological requirement. And number 3, practice deep self-compassion when you aren't actively producing something. You really have to learn to be kind to yourself in those quiet, unproductive moments.
Finally, we have Section 5, setting healthy boundaries, and the actionable toolkits to get you there. Once you establish that your worth is intrinsic, you realize that saying no doesn't mean you're going to lose your place in the world. In fact, setting a boundary is actually the ultimate recharge. The sources provide this incredibly tactical mental checklist to run through before you answer any new request. Seriously, keep this on your mental dashboard. 1. Do I actually have the energy for this? 2. Is this truly my responsibility? And 3, will I resent this later? If that last question is a yes, your answer to the request absolutely needs to be a no. And look, when the answer points to no, you need a way to say it clearly. So here are some literal, real-world scripts from the literature to keep right in your back pocket. You can decline gracefully by just saying, I don't have the capacity for this right now. Or simply, I'd love to help, but my plate is completely full. You don't need a massive excuse or some 5-paragraph apology text. You firmly establish that you can protect your time and energy without destroying your sense of belonging. So, to summarize the big takeaways from our sources today, prioritize your internal battery over external expectations. Actively use those decline scripts. Literally practice them in the mirror if you have to. And remind yourself daily that your worth is entirely intrinsic. Protecting your emotional energy is definitely a journey, but the research promises us that the initial discomfort of setting a boundary is vastly outweighed by the incredible freedom that follows. Knowing what we know now from the data, knowing for sure that saying no will not cost you your place in the world, I want to leave you with this one provocative question to carry with you. What are you going to say no to today? Think about it. Reclaim your time, reclaim your worth, and keep growing. I'll see you in the next explainer.